possibly hope to meet.
Are you some sort of socialist, Kevin?
Well, I'm a Star Trek communist. I'm just waiting for replicators to create to solve for all material needs, and then I can live in Star Trek and I'll be happy.
Well, I'll be on holodeck 4, you guys. So
Uh, yeah, I, I'm just hoping I survive to see the space communist utopia that is Star Trek Next Generation. That's all I need.
yeah, I think that society's rules about how families work are starting to approach the idea that that's not at all how it works anymore.
Or ever.
Because ever, yes, that I've had some people comment to me like, "Oh, you're so lucky that you're able to get out because of blah 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 blah," and then they all assume that I had a very stereotypical family at the time where he made more than me and I stayed home watching the kid most of the time, and I'm like, no, he was in preschool full time, and yeah, we're paying for it, and this is how much money it costs. And to watch people's faces pale when they realize that infant care here, a year of infant care costs more than a year at the university.
Mm-hmm.
And society, like, nobody talks about that. Like, I didn't know about that when we decided to have a family. And so free childcare would it would be revolutionary. Like, I would happily pay more taxes if it meant that every person who had a child was still able to keep their job afterwards because they could afford to have a child and have a job, which many people can't. And that hurts us all.
Yeah, I think there's a lot about the first year of a kid's life that is, especially your first child, that is so difficult in any marriage. I mean, I have what I think is a pretty strong marriage and we're very good communicators, but that first year was tough. It was really hard. And there's a lot of things, I don't think we were ever approaching separation or divorce, but I think there's a lot of things that could make that first year go a lot better. So absolutely free childcare, but longer maternity leave. And
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one
Yes.
thing that always makes me curl up on the inside a little when I see it is when I have a client come to me and their kids are like 16, 14, and 2. I can
Mm-hmm.
categorically say, I normally try to avoid blanket statements, but I can say with absolute certainty, do not have a baby to save your marriage. There is whatever problems you're having less sleep and less money will make them worse, not better.
mm-hmm.
Just
Agreed.
thinking about this with my husband today at dinner, we were talking about some people that we knew who had had a baby to quote unquote save their marriage. And what a terrible idea that seemed because that's not how I would know. That babies put a lot of strain, children in general, in my experience, put a lot of strain on your marriage in a wide variety of ways.
It's the lack of sleep, you guys. It is
Yeah.
a torture technique for a reason.
Oh my gosh. Please tell my 2-year-old this, please.
Well, my 2-year-old woke me up at 5 a.m. this morning, so
I gotta say, so I don't think we talked about this, but Kelly and I'm friends with Matt and I've been friends with Kelly for, I think, going on 10 years now. And I love
Yeah.
being Uncle Kevin because I come over, I read a book, they think I'm awesome, and then I leave. It is the best. And then that morning, yeah, then the next morning, I'm asleep at 5 a.m. It's fantastic.
It's the lack of sleep, but I know Marie can back me up. It's also feeding those darn kids.
Oh,
That
food. I hate food, you guys.
No.
we both have kids who don't eat.
No. Yeah, it's because my life wasn't dramatic enough. In the middle of all of that, so 1 month before I had our youngest, our oldest was diagnosed with a tree nut allergy, a peanut allergy, and I think at that point it was just a sensory processing disorder, and the esophagus problem that was discovered about, I think, 6 months later. I was really sleepy at the time, you guys. Time, who knows? So like the stress of having kids is so much, but in my opinion, it's worth it because I wanted these kids so badly, and someday they're going to put me in the nice nursing home.
We'll play them this podcast to remind them.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. I have learned a lot that I hope I never need to know about divorce. And I think it's really good to think about the different ways that families exist and different ways that families form. I hope that we can continue having discussions about families, because I think that a lot of times, and maybe because it's just the easiest thing to do, but that lawmakers sort of don't think a lot about different forms of families.
Well, as a corollary to a subject I'm sure you've talked a lot about already, lawmakers tend to fit certain demographic profiles. That is not, working mother. So I'm a big proponent of, I'm thrilled every time I read an article about how many women are running for office in 2018. I'm very excited about that because in my experience, you're right, people don't know how much childcare costs. When I explain daycare is more than your mortgage, they look at me like I grew an extra head. So more people make
twice as much as your mortgage sometimes.
If people setting policy in this country were people who actually understood what being a parent on the ground looked like, I think we'd all be a lot better off.
I agree. And we actually did have a comprehensive program of affordable childcare during World War II, so it's not like we haven't done it before.
Also, Europe is a thing. It continues to be a going concern. like every policy we think we can't enact, they have had, and it's not perfect, and it comes and goes in waves, and they have their own things to deal with, and I appreciate all of that. But you can't tell me that an industrialized, liberty-focused society can't tolerate taxing people enough to pay for childcare. They're doing it as I sit here. France is like handing you baguettes and daycare left and right. I just
sold. I'm moving to France.
My plan B is find handsome Irish husband as quickly as possible to get to the EU before this all goes even further to hell than it already has.
Iceland, I think, the newly elected leader of Iceland, and I can't remember now if it's prime minister or president, but she's like a 41-year-old mother. So I'm sold. I'm moving to Iceland.
I forget what country it was, but there was a legislator who was breastfeeding on the floor during a debate, and I was like, that's fine.
Wasn't that New Zealand?
Thank you. I was like, what country was that? It's an island. There we go.
Yeah. I remember seeing that, and I was like, you go, girl. Oh, yeah.
I've never understood the anti-breastfeeding people. I was on a plane coming home from spring break once next to a mother and what clearly was a 2-week-old, and she discreetly breastfed the child for that whole 6-hour flight, and I couldn't have been more happy. I'm like, because that kid's going to be quiet. I don't get the people who think hungry, screaming babies are better than public breastfeeding. I don't understand.
I remember the only time I flew with either of our kids, Teddy was 13 months old, and it was only like an hour-long flight. We were going to Cleveland, and I was breastfeeding him, and I was getting the stink eye from the guy sort of in the aisle with us. And I was like, seriously? You do not want me to not be breastfeeding him right now?
I actually got yelled at one time for breastfeeding in public, and I wasn't breastfeeding. I was just holding my kid. And someone came up and yelled at me for it. Oh, put your boobs away, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be breastfeeding in public, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just standing here holding the baby.
I think my crowning achievement of breastfeeding is when my youngest was, I think he was about 2 months old, and I love to do 5Ks, and I was like, I'm clearly not going to run this because I just had a baby, but I'm going to walk this. So I walked a 5K while I had my son like strapped to me because I was baby wearing, and about like mile 2, it's like I'm almost done, he starts being like, rah! And so I just kind of like loosen the strap, and so I'm like walking a 5K while I'm breastfeeding my son. And there was some mascot guy kind of dancing around in the crowd, just be like, "Ooh, look at this!" And he came up to give me a high five. And then the guy inside the costume saw that I had a baby currently breastfeeding, and I've never seen somebody go still so quickly. And he's like, "Oh!" And I heard him inside the little costume being like, "Holy crap! Holy crap!" And I'm like, "Yes, 5K while breastfeeding. Thank you very much."
If we still minted coins for everyday currency, I think that would have to be the image stamped on the back in the new age. That's a good.
Normalize breastfeeding, everybody.
So if anyone listening here is a working mother, a perhaps breastfeeding working mother, and believes that representation in government matters. We've had 2 episodes already about women running for office, and we're having another one next week, so I encourage you all to listen in and run for office. All right, any more final thoughts?
Well, if anyone would like to listen to more of me, you can listen to me at My Book of Mormon podcast, where I'm reading right through all of the religious texts of, the Mormon religion. But don't worry, there's a drinking game.
As there should be.
Yep.
So I should probably give a quick shout out to the agency I work for. The website is life-span.org, life-span.org. So if you or someone you know is in an unsafe relationship, please reach out. Even if you don't live in the area we serve, we absolutely can hook you up with the people in your area who can. And you can find me and Kelly's husband Matthew on our podcast, Treknababble, which we should probably be recording as soon as we're done here because the microphones are already set up.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And you're going to be hearing a lot of us. We have a lot of episodes scheduled and a lot of good stuff coming up. So I hope you'll keep listening, everybody. Our theme music is called Sweeter Vermouth and was composed by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Our logo was created by Matthew Weflin expressly for Two Broads Talking Politics and is copyright 2017. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or at twobroadstalk on Twitter. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. Please let us know if you have any trouble finding us.